break for a quick round of responses. We have Hisham asking particularly on action plans. To have plans and plans, action plan is going, it's already in place, it's already written up. In response?
Yeah, to respond what Hisham asked, so I will narrow it down to NYSC from the government. So yes, the National Plan of Action on Youth Employment has been in place in Sri Lanka. The NYSC has taken into consideration those recommendations made on that policy, and with a connection to what Fadil said, so we as the NYSC, as public sector training provider, we had integrated those social skills, the development of social skills plus the vocational skills, and which means that embedded the social skills part into BT is a recommendation made in that National Action Plan of Action. And also through our network of youths, through our National Youth Clubs Federation. So for the moment we have like around 700,000 youths membership all around the country. So we have introduced this social skills development particularly for youths, targeting the job seekers, part and parcel of the labor force, because as an institution we believe that the youths who enter into the labor force, the workforce, without or I would say without proper employment prospects and underdeveloped skills and inadequate education knowledge is a matter to keep unemployment, sustained unemployment in the country. So that is why we believe that not only vocational training, including the soft skills and the changing of attitudes, is integrated into our normal BT courses.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Kishu on the labor laws. You're an employer. What's the kind of constraint you face with the Sri Lankan?
If you look at the short history, the biggest impediment to investment in the country has been the labor regime we have. And the second thing there is, of course, the government policy or lack of policy implementation and things like that. But always, whenever the prospective investors come in, they highlight labor law in Sri Lanka as one of the biggest impediments. Right? So that's a fact. So we need reforms.
Okay. I'm going to go to Prajeeth and also and to anyone else on two things very quickly. Your VC sources in general, not particularly for change, and also Dinu's dilemma, protection of why do you need to protect? Why do you need protectionist policy? Let them innovate or die, versus some kind of a policy framework to incubate startups, protect startups initially, foster that kind of startup businesses. And maybe also if anybody else wants to respond to that, you will go first.
Okay. In terms of, let me reiterate again, I just need to answer one more question here from the University. When we select an entrepreneur, we select the entrepreneur on their willingness to take risk along with us, because it's high risk capital. And the professor was saying Sri Lanka is averse to high risk. And we are trying to change the mindset there by bringing in the funds. And the funds come from local angels. Right? And we have actually tied up with the Indian angels, not just for the funds, but to make sure we have scalability on the other side. We have enough funds here. For the startup capital that we require here in Sri Lanka, there are enough angels to get the funds. So there is no issue with the funds in terms of, and that's why we are creating the Lankan Angel Network right now. And we are having a pool of Sri Lankan investors who are going to be there. Not just investors, mentors as well. And definitely nobles in there. It's going to be people who will be focused on empowering the entrepreneur. So how we actually going to invest, there's one entrepreneur here, maybe he could elaborate on this as well. How we actually going to take a minority stake, so that way the entrepreneur feels very comfortable. And that's why I say we select the right candidate, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, which university comes from, rural area, whatever. So we select the right entrepreneur with the right mindset. So if the entrepreneur, what I was trying to say before was, what I've noticed, my personal experience with local universities is, the students coming out of there are brilliant guys, but not willing to take the risk. And that's the problem, not that they're backwards. They're not willing to take the risk. As opposed to the guys coming from the private sector, private universities, are willing to take that extra mileage. I don't know, maybe because they are from affluent backgrounds, I don't know. But again, having said that, we've funded one of the companies that is working with the rural community. There's a girl from AOD who graduated, I think she's from Goa, Nitya Amaheva. And she's actually working with the rural community to do labels. She actually does ethical fashion. And she won the SLDF Ethical Fashion Award 2 years ago. And so, brilliant girl, very focused, but lacked a lot of things, and that's where we come in to mentor.
Prajeeth, on the innovate or die, forget about protectionist policies versus how much of a role does the government have to play in bringing in a policy that supports startups, fosters this ecosystem, also of course bringing in people, organizations like yourselves.
Well, at the moment, we don't get any help from the government in terms of fostering entrepreneurs. I would like to see government involvement in terms of, for a startup especially, if it's in a particular trade that interests the government, maybe give some tax incentives. That would greatly help the startups.
I'm going to go to, sorry, Rashita.
Just a quick interruption.
Sure.
Just to add a little bit, what NYSC is practicing is to support just startups. So we do, as I mentioned earlier, we integrate the ED part, the entrepreneurship development part, also into our skills vocational training programs, and by providing that, we actually introduced a small grant scheme in SETI, the self-employment promotion scheme, to support a little bit for the startups.
Nisha, I'm going to go to you on the one question, and it goes back to something you mentioned earlier. How much do we spending on education versus the amount actually spent on delivery of education? It comes back to your point, the inputs versus the outputs and outcomes on education. Any comment on that?
Just like how much you spend on
Rashita, it was about, there's always talk about underinvestment in education. I think you want to know, has anybody looked at how much is spent on actual delivery of education in the state sector versus cost of delivery of education in the private sector?
I think actually, I don't know if you compare what our Sri Lanka is spending on education with what the other countries are spending, I think we need more resources in the education sector, so that can increase. But the amount of resources in the education sector is not the only thing that matters. How you use it and what you do with it also matters. And there are different ways. I mean, the fact of the matter is we need more resources to upgrade and bringing science and technology education and also expand the tertiary education sector, all of that. But where should that come from? That is a question.
Okay, I'm going to take Professor your question right at the end because we are almost ready to wrap up along with my question. I will take the last two questions. That is first from Lahiru and second from Professor.
Thank you very much. My name is Lahiru. I just wanted to comment on Prajeeth's thing as an entrepreneur and the risk-take factor, and maybe a comment on some of the underlying themes which are going on. And it's both are connected. One of the key issues I feel, which is a huge impediment in Sri Lanka, is this idea of what is to be a Sri Lanka. I mean, we started off this discussion about loving Sri Lanka and so on and so forth. And I think we are very inward looking. And we are talking about investment coming in. It can't always be a dollar or a pound value. It could be ideas. What are we doing from a policy standpoint and as businesses from advocacy standpoints to bring this in? We have a very narrow idea of what is to be Sri Lanka. I think this has to change. I mean, this has led to a huge conflict in Sri Lanka. So, if you look at all the innovative places in the world, they don't look monoethnic or they don't all look alike. As Prajeeth said, Silicon Valley was eating parathas. There were a bunch of Indians, Sri Lankans coming up with great ideas. We always talk about Sri Lankans going abroad and giving great ideas. When was the last time we celebrated, other than Arthur C. Clarke, somebody coming here and sharing a good idea? Why are we not a society which is embracing? We talk about Sri Lankan hospitality, but we do not embrace it. So that is one of them. As far as risk-taking is concerned, I think I've been very fortunate to be mentored by people like Prajeeth Dilendra, who's my chairman, who who have had that exposure, bro. And I think as a policy framework, we should think about getting ideas in and individuals in who wants to be in this country.
Thank you. Dr. Ulruan, you have the last question of the evening.
Well, I'm fortunate to be here today. It was very enriching, the discussion. I don't have a question, but a comment. Just as a person who has come from the village, I think what I'm going to say here, none of you are going to agree with. So still I'm going to say it. Firstly, I'm a person from the village. In 1982, when I first applied for a job in one of the big companies in this country, having a first class in science from University of Lanka, I can remember they gave me a big application form when I went to the company before the interview and asking me to fill so many things on that. And one of the questions there was what my grandfather was. That was the question, one of the questions that they had asked. So what I did was, I simply crossed that question and I handed over the application form. I did not think that it would strike them that hard, but I was called upon by the human resources manager and asked, why didn't you respond to this question? My immediate answer was, did you want to employ my grandfather or me? Obviously, I did not get the job. I think that would answer what a person coming from the rural, humble backgrounds of this country is have been facing from the private sector in this country.
In 1982.
In 1982, yes.
I don't know if you face the same situation.
I don't know. So I'm not going to say it's the case today, but I'm sure there is something for you to think of what the situation faced by the humble people coming from the rural villages and getting the degrees in the state sector universities and getting onto the business market. One. Second thing, I think only a passing remark was made regarding English. It is true that those students are not good in English. Now we are teaching in Sinhala in our universities. When we teach the subject in Sinhala, definitely when they get out, their English skills are not the best. I myself is an undergraduate who did all my 3 years or plus in the university in Sinhala language. And I consider when I get into the business, what they should test me is not my English, but my skills. If you want to test, if you want to get an output of a person, if you want to get a contribution, creativity, I'm with you, the soft skills and the other things and the attitudes and all, yes, fine. Rather than trying to fix wings to a fish and try to make it fly, why can't you change the environment from water, from air to water? Then fish will swim well in water rather than trying to make him fly with fixed wings. So I think on the one hand, we are trying to do a lot to change the man and the entire environment and the culture and the way we have brought up. Rather, can't our private sector and the business environment change that?
Okay. Challenge to the...
I want to finish it.
Very good. Yes.
Please, give me this opportunity.
Yes.
In fact, you broke my flow.
In the interest of time.
Now, the point is, I had the opportunity of doing my studies in Sinhala and then did my master's degree in English and then my PhD in French. Now, I consider learning a language is just a tool. Now, don't try to impose that as a skill that you want to have in the business environment, perfectly spoken, very perfect, correct language. I think nowhere else in the world that English is given this kind of a prominence in the business environment than in Sri Lanka. So let the business sector also change, that we look for the skills. I want to make another point. I think we are totally mistaken about the universities. luckily that mention of the university was only a little. I'm an academic, so let me defend the university system in this country, particularly the state university system in this country. We are misunderstanding the entire notion of university. Universities are not factories producing employable graduates as products to the business environment. The meaning of a university is to create a thinker, a philosopher, a person who would understand something and try to change the world in philosophical way. That's the basic notion of a university. We had medical colleges. In the history, they were not universities. We had technical colleges, polytechnics. They were not universities. Those were producing employable people. Accountancy colleges, law colleges, business colleges, whereas the philosophy, the creativeness and things were developed in the universities. Now what happened was, I don't think after Sarath Chandra there was any creativity in our universities because we were trying to change our system. We were trying to change the universities to produce employable graduates. Now what we have missed the point is that if you want to have employees or employable people produced in the system, well, innovate a mechanism and change the system, and also let the private sector change, like what Japan did. Japanese by nature are very risk-averse people. They are very risk-averse people. What they did was, rather than trying to change the Japanese to take the risks, they created business models like Gayan Panditharatna and all, so that they would feel safe in doing the business in this country. So I think while the universities are blamed all the time, Sri Lankan university graduates are always coming first, second, third ranks in any international university that you go in their subject excellence. So let us master that, because we don't want to change that by trying to produce kind of employable graduates. Our duty, our task is to produce the cream of knowledge for the world, and we are doing that. And for you to have employees, for you to have technicians, for you to have employable products, let us innovate a different system. Thank you.
Very provocative comments, and that's a very good question. I'm coming to end on. I'm going to give Kishu and Prajeeth a chance to respond to that from the private sector perspective. Very briefly, challenge to the private sector.
I have no comment.
I gave a lot of comments, but they will be cursing me if I go on for long. If the universities are meant to produce thinkers, philosophers, don't complain. Private sector will not employ. That's it. Very simple.
But very spot on answer. Okay. Anyone else want to respond on that? And I think you can continue the dialogue with Dr. Bruno. I think it goes back to something that Nisha said as well. The balance between university system and the education system providing workers to tailor to the workforce versus a generous set of competency. I'm going to wrap up with putting all of you on the spot. I need to know from you your top one or at most two big ideas for change. Sri Lanka is aspiring to be a knowledge economy. There's a jobs challenge. The demographic dividend is past us. Both from an inclusive growth point of view, also we need young people fully employed because we are needing to grow faster with fewer working age population. Your big ideas for the future, your big solutions, starting with, I will start with Kishu.
Very simple. We go at each other and we try to sort of criticize the system we have and these things we have in place. I guess those differences are there. Those differences are there in every part of the world. What is needed is for us to come together, work together to achieve what we want to achieve for the country. That's it.
I have a question on that. Was not specific enough for me. What can the private sector do?
Okay.
What can the private sector do? Where do you see the future of the private sector's role in addressing this job challenge?
Well, private sector is basically, there to make a contribution towards the country's economic growth, within which, obviously, as that gentleman said, for the private sector to survive, you need to have profitability, and based on your profitability, there is a certain percentage you can allocate to do whatever, right? So you've got to operate within that as a private sector, right? So within that, there are limitations. You can only do ABC, right? So you can't expect the private sector to change the whole thing, resolve an issue that's this way. That wouldn't happen. So what is important, as I said, is for the private sector to join hands with all the other stakeholders of the country and work together.
Okay. Prajeeth, your big ideas for the future, knowledge economy, creating more good jobs.
Well, I lived outside for 20 years. I came back to Sri Lanka to make a difference. I saw a vacuum in the capital area in the entrepreneurship development, and I created that in the last 2 years. So I think there is markets are very immature here compared to the West. I couldn't have done this in the other countries I was in, maybe Australia, Japan, or England, right? Because these things exist there and it will be very competitive. Here nobody touched this for SMEs, and so I saw the vacuum and I created this. And similarly, I think I touched upon this before. I think there could be a lot of expats brought back in Sri Lankans out there who are well educated, doing very well out there, who can be brought back to start up these businesses and help the ecosystem here.
Okay, Rashita, we have Kishu saying that we all need to work together on getting some of these things going. Prajeeth is telling us reverse the brain drain to brain gain and the diaspora potential. Rashita, what is your idea? Some of your big ideas for the future, where we need to go?
I think as for the moment we are entertaining a demographic bonus for the moment. So I think it is the time to support these youths, particularly to build their competencies, skills, plus try to support them to change their mindset and try to match their aspirations with the present job market. And at the same time, I think private sector also has a responsibility to create an environment to assure that social recognition and the I think particularly the social recognition for certain vocations in practice, especially the skilled vocations, the jobs. So I think it's a responsibility of private sector.
Well, I heard this story of Usain Bolt where he wanted to become a cricketer, and someone told him to do running and become the fastest, and he became the fastest. So I really don't find any person in the education system, in schools especially, who can tell someone, okay, you need to do this, you are good in this, you need to master this, or you study this, try doing this. There is no one like that in the school system.
It's your big message on guidance.
Yes.
Okay. Nisha, and particularly on inclusive growth. And also, what were you going to say? Plus, team ready, and I'll tell you why I said that.
Yeah, I think the one for me is reduced dependency. Dependency of people asking government about jobs, for companies to survive. You need to get rid of that so that they learn to survive. And of course, you have to have the facilitating environment and give them support and all of that, but don't let them
Reduce dependency. Okay, I think that is a good point. As any, you can continue the discussion with some extremely respectfully.
Did the panel answer?
Sorry, the panel didn't answer. I apologize. Very quickly, yes, on this thing about scientific illiteracy in top management, not taking risks on innovation. Anyone has anything to say? Very quickly.
I think you're spot on. And I think actually you should go beyond that to policymakers because they don't understand and they have to be knowledgeable on science and technology so that they can guide the country.
Anyone else want to come? Okay. Why we're interested in this and why I put Nisha on the spot about inclusive growth is because we do cover these issues in both our State of the Economy 2011 report last year and also the forthcoming in October, where we talk about, last date was the importance of jobs, human resource, education, health, all of that to create a more inclusive growth trajectory for Sri Lanka. This year's theme is, if we want to remain on the growth expressway, what are the factors that are going to constrain it or what needs to be fixed to make sure we stay on this growth expressway? And certainly one big part of that is this human resource. So look forward to that. I'm going to bring this panel Q&A to a close. I thank all the panelists. We can continue with cocktails, but very quickly I'm going to invite Dr. Saman Kelekam, Executive Director, to speak a few words.
Thank you. It was a very enriching, very educative discussion, and I thank all the panelists and members of the audience for enriching this discussion. And I think I personally benefited from this discussion. And this is precisely what the IPS wants to promote in the coming years. let me briefly tell you that about the IPS. We were established as an economic policy research institute, and basically our research was disseminated through publications and through our website. But it was only recently that we have been starting using the social media. In fact, we were a latecomer to the social media. Our blog was launched in the year 2009, and during the last 2 years we launched our Facebook, the Twitter, and this year we launched the YouTube, and this is for more networking as well as to promote the economic policy dialogue. In fact, in our blog we have more than 50 entries today, and we want the private sector professionals to know about the economic debate that we are promoting. So, unlike some of the other blogs that are available, like Ground Views, etc., economics being a specific subject, we do not have that many responses, because we are not dealing with a general topic like politics or day-to-day issues. What we want to encourage is for more private sector professionals to engage in this debate, and that is why we have collected the articles that appeared in our blog from January to June this year and compiled this document which we are launching today. In fact, in that document, the majority of the articles are on creating jobs, better jobs, etc. And that is precisely why we selected this theme today. In fact, IPS has been working on this area of employment. Nisha Arunatilake heads this division on labour market and labour policy issues. But this year, how this became a popular topic in the IPS is because we joined hands with the World Bank to launch the World Bank report called South Asia Development Matters, and the topic he dealt with was creating better jobs, and that launch created a very lively debate, and that triggered our staff getting involved in writing more articles about the job market in Sri Lanka, and several of them are in this document that we are launching today. So, we have been doing much work on the labour market, and some of the areas that were discussed today, like the mismatch in the labour market, debate that has been going on in Sri Lanka since the 1970 Countries Years report, which is still valid. Then the labour laws, labour legislation, to what extent it is an impediment for creating jobs. Then the desire to get jobs from the state sector. Why are people quit? This is under the queuing hypothesis of the labour market. Why are people waiting in the queue to get jobs in the labour market? And all that we had looked at in detail. But then we really wanted to get a deep insight on what the private sector thinking is on this issue, and we in the IPS benefited from the inputs from the panel members and from the inputs from the audience, and I hope that you all will benefit from some of the articles which appear in this document that we are launching today, and in the future you all will engage in this debate that we are trying to promote through our website on economic policy issues and policy alternatives in this country. So let me take this opportunity to thank all the panelists here and private sector professionals and others who accepted our invitation and being present with us here today.
Thank you, Dr. Pellis. I invite Dr. Pellis to please launch the first copy of this digest first to Mr. Patrick Singh. Thank you very much, sir. And also to the other panelists, thank you very much for taking the time. copy on the way out. Before we close, I just want to quickly say ways to stay connected with us. Our publications, there's a publications desk out there. Also stay tuned for when we launch the State of the Economy report in October. Our web has all our information, staff information and publications. Our blog particularly, and that's a big reason why all of you are here, because you took the time to be here for this dialogue. Please don't let it end. We need people like you with good ideas, taking the time to have an opinion. Please visit our blog and leave your views, post questions, contentions on articles that you see there. And of course, join us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for those who have been seeing some of the Twitter messages. Thank you for those who used our Twitter hashtag and tweeted from the event. That's very encouraging. We invite all of you for some cocktails and fellowship outside. Thank you.